Joining me now is Senator Mike Lee, who stated that, quote, "We will not allow American military personnel to arrest and indefinitely detain U.S. citizens." Senator Lee, it's always a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thank you, Judge.
Senator Lee, tell me where you stand on this. I know there were a number of votes, and some of them were procedural, and some of them were substantive. And it seemed to those of us watching from a distance that at one point you were not upset by the McCain-Levin proposal, and yet you ultimately voted against it. So, does the United States government, through the military or any other agency, have the authority to arrest Americans and lock them up without a trial, without a judge, without charges?
It claims that authority. It should not have that authority, and that's why I was an original co-sponsor of the Feinstein Amendment that would have made that point clear. And that's another reason why I voted against the final bill when it came up for a final vote, is because these provisions remained in there that appeared to extend that authority. That is, the authority indefinitely to detain U.S. citizens without trial, and I'm strongly against that.
Are you as perturbed as I am about the entire concept of using the United States military for domestic law enforcement? And of course, we're not talking about directing traffic. We're talking about sending troops into the streets or into people's homes to arrest them without any judicial intervention or need to file charges whatsoever. Does this trouble you?
Oh, it troubles me immensely because, among other things, it violates the Fifth Amendment, it violates the Sixth Amendment, it has the potential to result in severe violations of the Fourth Amendment, and it also violates the longstanding principle of posse comitatus, the idea that we don't enforce our laws on civilians within the United States through our military forces. This was the whole reason why the American Revolution took place, or a large part of it anyway, and that's why I've been consistent on this front.
The bill that now is on its way to the House or is at the House, if it is voted on by the House of Representatives and signed by the President, will this reprehensible, utterly troubling, and profoundly unconstitutional provision become the law of the land? And the President can dispatch the military to arrest anyone, perhaps you or me, without evidence, without a charge, and without a judge intervening?
Perhaps so, yes. Now, with or without this law going into effect, these are authorities now claimed by our government, which is disturbing in and of itself. But once you codify it into law, that takes the disturbing aspects of this bill to a whole new level, and that's one of the reasons why I've been so concerned about it. We have to remember, Judge, that it's not just about what the government's doing today. They're not today going out and just randomly arresting people on the streets. But that doesn't mean that a few months or a few years from now, they might not extend their authority that much further. That's why we need to put in place specific structural restraints so the government doesn't and knows that it can't exercise this kind of authority, resulting in indefinite detention of U.S. citizens without trial.
It's perhaps a little unfair for me to ask you to get into the head of your colleagues, Senator Lee, but there were only 7 of you who voted against this. 93 senators, including some colleagues of yours as heretofore faithful to the Constitution as Jim DeMint of South Carolina, voted in favor of this. What's in their heads? Don't they see the profound violation of the Constitution? Don't they see the profound opportunity for the abuse that you just characterized to be used by some president in the future whose name they don't know and in whose hands they would repose no trust?
I unfortunately can't speak for them. I know only what my concerns are, and I've tried to express those to my colleagues and will continue to do so. I remember the words of the Federalist Papers that if men were angels, they'd have no need for government. And if government could be run by angels, then we would have no need of these pretty burdensome structural restraints on government power. But the fact is, we're not angels, and those who run government are not angels, and that's why we have to restrain their power. And giving U.S. military the authority to arrest and indefinitely detain a U.S. citizen without trial is a recipe for disaster. Whether that would occur.
Isn't it equally as offensive to the Constitution if the U.S. military arrests non-U.S. citizens on U.S. soil? Because after all, the Fifth Amendment protects persons. It doesn't limit its protection to Americans.
That is right, Judge. There are different standards that sometimes I think have to apply when you're talking about a prisoner of war situation. During World War II, when we arrested Nazi soldiers, we didn't suddenly subject them during the time that they remained as prisoners of war to the U.S. court system. We didn't allow them to avail themselves of that benefit. So I think there is a difference between citizens on the one hand and prisoners of war on the other hand. But no matter where you and I might disagree as to proper treatment of prisoners of war, I think we ought to all be able to agree as Americans that indefinite military detention without trial of American citizens is categorically unacceptable.
Senator Mike Lee, defending the Constitution. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.